first and foremost, we have Janelle, Raney from Pathlight, and Antonio deOliveira, who's a sales leader at Pathlight. Hopefully, Antonio didn't butcher the last name too much, but welcome. Could not be more excited to have you for a fantastic and relevant topic today. So we're going to talk about doing less or doing more with less and driving productivity without micromanagement. So a topic that comes up quite often in all of our consulting and everything that Tenbound is doing as of late. And I'm super excited to talk through this with you all today. So welcome, Janelle and Antonio.
Thank you.
Great.
Excited
Thanks for having
here.
us.
Yeah.
Great to be here.
Fantastic.
And thanks to everyone who's joining. That's awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
We got quite a few. It's starting to add up. So, okay, Janelle, first question is for you. So, as we all know, it's been tough sledding as of late in B2B SaaS for companies, over the last 3 to 4 months, realistically, building pipeline, closing deals, right? A lot of companies are even cutting growth plans, even current teams, right? Generally, what are some of the tactics that Pathlight has taken from the management perspective to ensure the highest productivity of the team?
Yeah, Pete, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's just been crazy. If you even look at the last 3 years, it's been crazy, right? We've all got COVID, the great resignation, thought everything was going great, and then we hit this recession, right? And it's been hard. And you're seeing it now even on TikTok with quiet quitting, right? And as a manager, you're going, what am I going to do, right? And your objectives have changed somewhat. Like, it used to be just grow. If you were growing, everything was good. Now it's, hey guys, let's actually look at that profit line, right? The operation margins really are super critical. And teams need to stay lean. And honestly, a lot of companies have either gone through layoffs or they're looking at layoffs. And that's never easy decisions, right? It's not a fun thing to go through on either side of that. And quite frankly, sometimes it's not always fair, right? Of who gets cut and why. So one thing that we really fundamentally believe in Pathlight is about having trust and transparency, right? Creating a workplace where it's essentially fair, right? You understand with your daily metrics, how am I doing? How am I performing? And there's full transparency for everybody on the team. Everybody's seeing the same reports at the same time, whether that's the leader, the manager, or the employee. They're all seeing it. They all know how they're doing. And the managers can be setting goals or mini goals, and you know if you're pacing towards that or not, which is really important, critical. And now the managers can know, right? Without spending hours in spreadsheets, they know who are my top performers and who do I need to hey, I gotta get more productivity out of these people. I need to coach them up, or I'm gonna have to make that tough decision to let them go, right? And nobody likes making those decisions. We spend a lot of time hiring people, onboarding them. There's a big investment in them. You want to coach your people up and you want to make sure they're productive. So as a manager, you also don't want to lose that head count, right? You want to keep them there. So that's really where we fundamentally believe, having that data, having those metrics, and having visibility into that. One, it just makes it fair. Everybody's remote. We're working at home. As a manager, you don't necessarily know who's performing well or not. But if you can say, hey, this is how many emails I need you to send. This is how many phone calls I need you to make. I know how well you're performing with that. And yeah, we do use it internally. Antonio can talk to this too for the sales team. We drink our own champagne, as we say, or and it's great. And even as a marketing team working with sales, we go in there and look as well, who's sending how many emails and what's their open rates? What's their response rates? How many meetings are they booking? And then, we can go in there and help them. Say, hey, let me look at your email sequence. What's going on here? Why aren't you getting the responses that you need to be getting? And so it just opens up those conversations and that transparency for that.
Interesting. So it takes the reporting side of things. Of course, we all know if it's not in Salesforce, not in CRM, it didn't happen, right? But having all the metrics and that kind of single pane of glass, that's fantastic. Drinking your own champagne. And I
think it really does, back to I need to have better operating margins, right?
Yeah.
Now I can really manage that. And your largest line item expense, it's not, another license of Gong or Outreach. It's your people, right? It's what you're paying your employees. And so you really do want to make sure that you're maximizing what they can do, but keeping it in that way that they're not burning out, they're not going crazy and working all sorts of crazy hours, but they're also not on that other extreme, quiet quitting and just kind of going through the motions, right? You really want to keep them engaged.
Yeah, absolutely. Even drinking champagne and keeping them engaged, it must be tough. No.
Well, we'll send you a cupcake too.
I like it. All right, that'll work. All right, Antonio. So now that we're all on the same page as far as inputs, outputs, activity, everyone's looking at the exact same data, right? If you have that down, as far as capacity planning, right? How do you finalize what's realistic for reps to operate at the highest level, whether it's, the sales development or business development org, whether it's the account executives, what the inputs look like, the outputs, where do you start? How do you tackle that?
Yeah, it's a very big problem and a very big challenge, actually. I know we probably have a wide range of folks watching this call who approach it very differently as well. So I always like to think of it in a very holistic, tackle it in many different ways approach. So you might know the typical easy way of looking at it, which may not be the best, but hey, here's our top-down quota that we told everyone we would hit. We told our investors, we told our board we're going to hit. Let's just spread that amount amongst the whole team. Now, is that based in reality? Maybe, maybe not. So you have to take another aspect of it, and maybe that's bottoms-up approach or looking at the data that you actually have for your team in the current moment. So, of course, there's typical forecasting methodologies, looking at your historicals and seasonality and your expected growth rates and whatnot. But I want to look at the data that's unique to my team right now and compare that to benchmarks. So things we look at, if let's say our team's not, we're trying to figure out how much quota capacity each team member has. Yes, we can give them a number and say, great, they're likely to hit this, but is that number realistic? I have to back into that. What are our reply rates? How much activity does it take to set a meeting? How many meetings does it take to set an op? What are our conversion rates for those ops? What are our average deal sizes? What's our sales cycle length? And like taking all of these components and variables and truly understanding like, okay, under these certain assumptions where we have this reply rate, we have these conversion rates, and these are average deal size, what activity backs into that? And is that realistic for a rep to have to do? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. So if it isn't, you reevaluate, okay, what levers can you pull? Maybe your conversion rates are lower. Okay, how do we increase our conversion rate? Because that'll decrease the amount of deals we need to have or amount of meetings or activities that we need to do. So all of these are different data pieces that come into play, and not saying any one way of looking at it is the right way, but you want to take all of this information in and then back into it into what activities are necessary for the team, and then share those, articulate those, get buy-in for them. It's like if you tell your team, hey, here's kind of the activities I see or the conversion rates that we're going to need to get to where we need to go, they're going to tell you if that's based in reality or not. And of course, they may not always, they may be coming from a different perspective, but it's important to take those perspectives in. And with all of this data, making it, you want quotas to be hard to achieve, yet achievable. No one wants to have a number that they know is not based in reality by any means. So no matter what they do, they're not going to hit it. There's other places they can work, other places they can go, where they will find that. And it can really bring down morale if you don't have anyone hitting numbers or even being close. So a big part of this is keeping your ear to the ground and understanding what your reps are actually seeing and moving and tweaking and pulling different levers as you go to make sure, do you have the right resources in place? What problems or challenges are they having coming up? So again, long-winded answer to all the different pieces that go into it, but that's sort of how we start looking at this capacity planning and what we can accomplish with not only the team that we currently have, but as we look and potentially need to grow or say, hey, we know we need to hit this number based off of our current team and all of these assumptions. Even if they did the best that they could, we're not going to because of these limitations. Maybe that means we need to hire someone else. But those decisions are are made calculated and very data driven.
That's awesome. Okay. Top down, bottoms up, data driven, right? There's a lot that goes into it. I've done it as well. So I know the language you're speaking far too well. So it's a complicated problem, right? It's kind of interesting. A lot of folks we're working with today even are going through this by, potentially laying off a portion of their team, right? And then just putting that quota on existing reps, which isn't fair realistically, right? So it's sad to see some of these things happening at the same time, retention of top talent and ensuring that you're keeping the folks that you want to keep in an environment like we've had over the last couple of years, as Janelle, you mentioned, the great resignation, talent was everywhere. Now folks really want to retain their top performers, right? Not only top performers, but people that truly contribute and make up the culture of a company, make up the kind of soul of a company. So at Pathlight, what are you all doing at the company or with the product that is ensuring the retainment of that talent better than anyone else?
Yeah, it's a great point. And the job market's interesting right now because as much as people are laying off, people are hiring too. Like there's actually a lot of opportunities out there. So how do you really make sure that you're retaining those top people? There's a few different tactics, and that's for sure. One is making sure they're compensated well, right? If they're one of your top people, maybe it's time to do a refresh, right? And really look at that. So especially if you just went through layoffs, you probably have a little bit of money that you still have left over on that, right? You want to make sure that you are compensating them. You're compensating them well. And then, of course, like you said, there's a lot of great things you can do that matter to the culture, right? People want to work for something that they believe in, that they can connect to as well, right? I think that's a lot of reasons people join Pathlight. It is the whole idea of, hey, I'm not going to spend hours in spreadsheets as a manager, which a lot of us have lived through that pain. And as an employee, like I actually see how I'm performing, and that's pretty cool. And we're selling that to people, and it's really changing their careers as well. I think one of my favorite stories, it's actually in the Pair Eyewear case study video. There's a gentleman who is, maybe a little unassuming, maybe a little quiet, but boy, behind the scenes, he was a great performer. And guess what? He got promoted because of Pathlight and them seeing the data. And, they probably wouldn't have noticed that, especially with the work at home environment that we have right now. But to keep people happy, I think one, there's, the team environment, the culture, the environment that you're building. It's, maybe it's setting up your mini goals in a way that it's fun, right? And you have contests and you have the leaderboards. I think all salespeople are a little bit competitive, right? So do that, have the fun rewards with that, making sure they're getting the recognition that they need with that. And then I also think it's really important to have the one-on-ones, right? You can have the team building, you can have all that, but it's really important as a manager that you're understanding what motivates that person. What are their levers? Why are they here? Like really even understanding that. And where do they want to be in like 3 to 5 years? And how can you put together a plan to help them get there? So there's a lot of listening with that. You'll also find with one-on-ones when you're using Pathlight, that individual tends to like drive that conversation a lot more. They're not coming in with like, all right, tell me where I am. Tell me what I need to do. They already know that coming into the meeting. So they're coming in with their highlights. They're telling you what they're doing great. They're telling you where they're struggling, or if it's too much, like you said, somebody got laid off and they're taking on more, right? And that's going to help you go back and figure out, do I need to reset expectations or where we are as a team on what we're going to be able to make. We have one more example from Stitch Fix, which isn't like SaaS BDR, SDR, but it is a sales team. They were able to decrease their leader to agent ratio by 20 to 30%. Meanwhile, they also cut attrition by 30%. So they really were able to create a much more positive environment for people. And even though managers were then having more agents report into them. So even though I had more people on my team, they were able to still give them the one-on-ones, give them the coaching, give them the feedback that they needed. And those agents also knew how they were performing. They also looked at their metrics. Before they were looking at 10 or 15, which is just, most people remember 3 things, right? So like they cut it down to 4 to 5 metrics that they really focus on. So these are the most important things you need to be focused on. Because if you give people 100 things that they need to go do, the things are going to fall through the cracks. So really decide like what's most critical for your team to be successful and what they need to be doing. And really just make sure you're focused on those and make sure you're really rewarding those top performers.
Awesome. It almost seems like Pathlight is kind of a great sales manager's best friend at this point, right? Or a great manager's best friend. I gotta take a look at this. This is interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's fantastic. I was just reading an article the other day. Actually, I completely forget what it was, but the title of the article is "Oftentimes Your Best Employee is the Most Quiet." Right. So your example there kind of rang true. It was interesting, but I should find that article, send it out. All right, Antonio, back to you. Let's talk about some metrics. I know, Janelle, you talked about, everyone looking at the same metrics. And obviously, Antonio, you're a data guy, right? Tops up, bottoms down, forecasting and capacity planning. There's so many tools out there today, right, that have metrics, whether it's your CRM, whether it's BI tools, sales tools on top, that sit on top of your CRM. There's so many different softwares out there that looking through a single pane of glass, right, is incredibly important for managers as well as the team, right? So we're all looking at the exact same data. How, speed is often overlooked. At the same time, with Pathlight, managing executives to ensure the general direction and the coaching is done with speed. Walk me through how you take a look at your metrics. What are you looking at? How are you looking at them? What's important to you? What's important to the reps?
Yeah, absolutely. It's another very big challenge in a lot of ways, right? I mean, there's so many, to your point, there's so many tools out there. I mean, just looking at our own tools or tools I've used in the past, there's Outreach, Gong, Salesforce, People AI, Chorus, like you have data sitting in all these different places. And I think step one is figuring out what data is important to you specifically and what you're trying to accomplish. If you're tracking 100 things, they may not all get you to where you want to go. So that's one thing we think about. And I'll use Pathlight as an example. Like we were looking and seeing, okay, maybe we're not getting the level of responses that we want on emails. Now that could be very different. That could be a bunch of different factors. That could be our messaging. That could be who we're targeting. That could be the amount of times, like, are we being very targeted to them, and then picking those apart and improving there. So all these things, it's hard to find them all in one place, right? So benefit we've seen here too at Pathlight is you can consolidate all of these different tools and metrics into one place. And I'll use myself as an example. Like we're pulling how many meetings our team's having into Pathlight from Gong. We're pulling a lot of data in from Salesforce. We're also pulling data in from Outreach. And now you can slice and dice that data however you want in one spot. So it does a couple things. It creates trust in what the data is saying, because you can verify where it's coming from, that it's actually aligning with reality. And then once you have the data, of course there's in one place, but you have to have that culture of trust and transparency and like a desire to do better, and being very results driven. And when I say results driven culture, it's saying, okay, what do we want to accomplish this week? If that's getting 2 meetings this week, or if that's building a $50,000 in pipeline, or whatever that is, have that be the end goal. And it doesn't matter the mix of activity that gets you there, because that can be gamified, and someone could, let's say, dial 100 dials if they wanted to, and you told them to, by having trust in your people that, hey, they're gonna figure out what's working. And now you have all that data as a lever to pull if someone's not meeting where they need to go. So as an example, let's say this $50,000 pipeline generation, and if someone's not meeting it, and I see that they have very high activity, now I can start looking into what that activity is exactly. Or maybe they are hitting it and they have low activity. Now I need to figure out what's working for them so that we can potentially replicate that across the team or share it. So that's all from the data side. And then from the coaching side, again, it all comes down to trust, and same thing with speed. You have to create an environment that's where folks aren't scared to give feedback. Folks aren't scared to speak up when they're having troubles. Where as a manager, it's like folks are scared to tell me what they think could be better or what they need, because that's when ideas get shared. And that even if it's an idea that doesn't get implemented, or at least the idea is there, and everyone's kind of working towards this goal of constant improvement and being better. And then talking kind of to one-on-ones and what Janelle mentioned, I always joke with my team. I like to think I'm pretty on top of things. Like I have notes everywhere, post-it notes, stuff. Try not to have stuff fall through the cracks, but having kind of a dedicated space where, hey, especially now when there's a lot more expected of not only frontline folks but managers and executives, like doing more with less, literally. The stuff will fall through if you don't have a place to keep it all and kind of keep yourself and everyone around you accountable. A lot of different factors playing in there, but we love to see it because, again, with all this metric visibility, you see not only do managers, executives, frontline folks have visibility into all the different pieces, or teams or different levels of an organization in one spot, that they can drill into, which Salesforce is great, but I know you can't do that within just Salesforce. Now they're bringing this data. They're looking, saying, oh, I see that I'm kind of falling behind compared to my peers, or I see that my team isn't executing as well as maybe another team is. Now I can go out and proactively ask for help in these areas, or proactively try to figure out what we could be doing differently. So again, there's a lot going on here, but again, foundation is the trust, making sure you're tracking the right things, and you're not just saying, hey, you need to meet these metrics for the sake of meeting them. There's a lot of purpose behind them and understanding into the outcomes that you want to have.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I think Antonio, you totally hit it. It's that data with the action. Like you said, like you can't do that in Salesforce. So whether it's, adding a GIF or emoji or a video message right with that metric and seeing it. And I also just wanted to add, like, to the culture part of that, the feedback is important, and having that trust is important with that. And one thing we do at Pathlight, we call it Raise Your Bar Day. It's one of our core values. It's RYB Day. And that's where everybody gives feedback, and they give it in Pathlight. It's in the messaging system in there. And I remember being a little nervous at first, like, oh God, nobody's gonna give me feedback. But you know what? I mean, it takes like one cycle to go through, and you realize like how valuable that feedback is, because it just makes you better. And everybody's giving it with good intentions, right? Of, hey, you didn't quite think about that, right? Or your blind spots of what you didn't think about, or what you could do differently, or where you should be focusing your time differently. And it's really a gift when people are giving you that feedback. And we shouldn't be afraid of that as people to do that.
That's awesome. I mean, not only can you give feedback and videos, but we're understanding you can even do live metrics and seeing it live from your team, especially in a distributed team, as many folks are today, right? That's incredible to have all the data from all those sources all in one place. Everyone's looking at the same thing. It's a sales ops dream, sales, executive's dream. So good deal. All right, Janelle, let's go with you. Let's get a closing statement from each of you as far as what you're thinking in the economic climate today, Pathlight, anything. What do you got? Round it out.
Well, I'm a little bit like a goldfish. I think I wake up every morning completely optimistic. Although I do think this recession is going to be a while, right? I mean, you look at what's happening, just the economics of what's happening with Russia, what's happening in China, and in the Middle East. I mean, in Europe, they're turning off the lights. There's a lot going on in the economy, and I think we're going to have to tough through it for a few more months here. Hopefully it turns around soon with that. But good times or bad, I think it really does come down to what sort of culture do you want to create, and how do you get the best out of your team? And again, back to your title, not micromanaging, right? So you don't need to have cameras on people or keyboard trackers, right? Like let's all treat each other as adults and humans and get your job done and perform well, and and support each other in that way. And we'll all get through it.
Awesome. I like it. Antonio, wrap it up.
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up. What do we got? Any closing thoughts here? What do you got?
Closing thoughts. And to your point around the economic climate, I mean, there's a lot of folks, I think, in the working world today, especially younger generations, who may not have had to work through times like this, right? And I think something very important to remember is the nice thing about now, to the earlier point, is there are still a lot of jobs out there to be had, right? And just really having how to separate yourself as you're looking to change your career or try something different, or quote unquote do more with less within your current job, is is realizing, yes, times might be harder on the horizon for many different reasons, but having that kind of positivity that it will get better, having that grit and determination that, hey, if I'm doing the right things, if I'm working hard, I know that at least at the end of the day, I can be happy with what I did, and I know I'm growing, and that, hey, if we'll get there together. And all of that boils down to culture and kind of what values folks want to have personally and as an organization, because the organization is just made up of a group of individuals, right? So I guess closing statement, I'll say, hey, with everything going on, like, very excited, even for smaller companies out there, companies that are trying to get by be scrappy out there, and think folks just need to know there's a lot of opportunity, and just have to go out there and get it, and work hard and have that grit.
Awesome. Well, Janelle, Antonio, thank you so much for participating in this. For you all out there, if you haven't checked out Pathlight, make sure to stop by their booth, pathlight.com as well. You can go talk to Antonio and his team, get a demo, check it out. But thank you so much for joining us today. I really do appreciate it. And until next time.
Great. Thank
Thank you for having us.
See you guys.